Well, hello. It is, what day is this? September 28th, 2023. And today, this came out Gloves of Eons, which is book 3 in the Kallattian Saga. And it's out. So I thought I'd pop on and do an impromptu live stream. If anybody shows up, you're welcome to ask any questions you may have of this book and other books that I've written. This is my 5th book, 6th publication that I've put up, not including audiobooks, which I narrate myself. And book 3, it's out. I'm currently writing book 4. Book 1 and 2 are, if this is your first time ever coming across me, Deathless Beast. Book 1 of the Kallattian Saga came out November last year. And then Bone Shroud, book 2, came out December of last year. And now it is September of this year, and book 3, Gloves of Eons, is out. It's been a long road to get here. I started writing back in the 90s when I was a kid, and wrote a full novel in 2010. It wasn't that great, and stopped writing for a while. And in 2017, I started writing again and really buckled down, and was in the query trenches for a long time, pitching both Deathless Beast and Thrice, the first book in my Slavic fantasy series. And then a little thing called COVID happened, and during that year, my wife and I decided we're going to go indie, and we've been indie since then. Hello, Quinn. Quinn has read Gloves of Eons, and I am happy to answer any questions you have, Quinn, or anybody else who shows up. And then in a little bit too, I can also do a reading. So we'll do that in a few minutes anyway. So I'm writing book 4 right now. I just passed the 100,000 word mark, and I've got about 60,000 words to write. And I think I'm lowballing that because book 4 is the end of the first half of the 8-book series. So it's going to have a bit longer of an epilogue tying up loose ends after the fallout of the book occurs. And here's hoping it isn't a complete Sanderlanche at the end, but it will be a denouement for sure. That's exciting. And after I finish writing that book called Dread Knight, book 4 of the Kallattian Saga, I will move on to writing the end to the Needle and Leaf series. So, Quinn, I'm not entirely sure. He is asking if it's going to be the longest of the 4. We'll see. When I wrote Gloves of Eons, it was 175,000 words. The first 2 are 150,000 words. And after my editor took a knife to it, it only came into about as long as the first 2 books. So I'm currently I've set Dread Knight to be, I'm looking at 160 to 170,000 words, and I would bet it gets cut back down to 150. So it may end up being just as long as the others, which I'm kind of surprised at. And maybe I've just become a better writer at being more concise in what I'm saying. But I thought as I added more points of view that it would be longer. I've pretty much vowed I'm going to try never to publish anything longer than 200,000 words as an indie, because then the cost for me to print ends up being too much of a cost to anybody who wants to read the books. So, I try to avoid. I'm trying to keep myself limited to less than lower. Less than 200,000 words for a book. And for you page counties, this is 562 pages. So a 200,000 word book would be closer to 700 to 800 words. A 700 to 800 pages. So I'm trying to avoid that because it just costs too much for you guys to read a book when a paperback ends up costing $30 to $35 at that point, and I don't want to do that. So yeah, that answers that question. I have another series I may have to greenlight even before I finish writing Needle and Leaf series, but that has yet to be determined. And yes, it would be the Protectorate Wars, but I'm outlining that now, as well as outlining Needle and Leaf, which are a little bit shorter, quite a bit shorter. They're half the size of one of these. So I'm very excited to next year finish both Kallattian Saga 1 through 4 and Needle and Leaf will be as its main series will be done next year. There will still be a couple of prequels to Needle and Leaf and at least one other book past that will be about other characters in the same universe. But it'll be good to finish up Needle and Leaf's story next year. So, yeah. Well, how about read a story? This is from the Gloves of Eons, and it is a story told around a campfire by Marn Clout. One night, Marn said, dropping his voice into the cadence of a storyteller, I sat upon the stairs of my home, and an old man passed by from the crossroads to town, humming a familiar tune. I was only a boy at the time, with my grandfather away. My bravery was green and untried. He came to the gate that kept strangers at bay, if only by tradition. A child could have left it. In fact, I had, many a time, and asked, Would you test your bravery within your chest? I startled, for how had he known my thoughts? What do you mean, stranger? I asked. The old man chuckled. I mean nothing by it, he said. Only I just came from the crossroad and saw upon the signpost a Zvolderweb, a 12-legged fiend, at its center with a brilliant color upon its armor. You seem a lad who might wish to see such a wonder. I thank you kindly, says I, but I am charged by my mother's father to stay at my post. The old man shrugged, and away he walked. Silver Ume rose and shed her glow, by which I could see the silver-threaded weave with the black of chitin at its center, turning web to eye as it bore its gaze upon me, and I was frightened. My bravery struck like a hammer upon the forge of fear. I found myself at my gate, watching that gaze and pondering the fear within my gut that pushed back against my bravery. After a time, a red glow of rising Norlock lit the eastern horizon as it followed its sister moon in the nightly dance across the starlit sky. The baleful stare of the web glinted in both lights, and the fear within me grew. I saw then a languid form move into the light of the moons to the center of the crossroads. It was a small core. I could not tell its color nor even its true size in the double shadows cast by the moon, taking from its form and adding fear within my gut. It sat in such a way that I could not tell if it was contemplating the Zvolder and its web or myself. I had no doubt that something was about to take place. The night wore on, and I leaned upon the gate, watching as the unmoving core and the baleful web continued their vigil at the crossroads. Into the silver and red lights danced and capered a troop of Wyloths, performing for Zvolder and core a merry dance. A shiver ran down my spine, adding a rising dread to the fear that stood stoically in my gut. But the troop fell still upon the road, their dance upon the road complete, and exhaustion brought them low. And yet the corps only watched. The Zvolder did not strike. The moons continued their slow procession, and I wondered at this. For by what means does the corps not take easy food, nor Zvolder the opportunity to capture prey? And it was then the thought dawned on me. Perhaps they work not their wiles upon each other, but instead upon another. Someone I could not see. Or perhaps, said the terror growing in my heart, they worked against one I could only have seen in the mirror. Perhaps they sought to take me. My bravery quavered and collapsed. I fled into my house, slamming the door, for fear, dread, and terror had conspired against me, and my bravery buckled. This folder's web suddenly flashed with a consuming fire, and I felt the dark magic the deceiver used to ensnare the souls of untoward men, and I shrank from that in fear. Moments later, the door I had just slammed began to rattle. The latch clicked, and I began to cry out to the gods to protect me. I pray I did not fall to such an agony as a Zvolder, housecore, or troop of Wyloths might meet upon me. And into the house stepped an answer to prayer, the form of one who always banished my fear day in and out. My grandfather had returned. He took me into his arms and consoled me until I could see reason once more, and could describe what I had seen. The old man then carried me out the door, and fear, dread, and terror took hold of me again. I fell to crying and pleading to go back into the house. He carried me through the gate and down the path to the crossroads where Zvolder, Kor, and Wyloth awaited me. Look, he said, pointing to the ground. He kicked at leaves lying still on the road. No troop of Wyloths come to cavort. He put me down and pointed to a gap in the cobbles, the deep shadows cast by moon playing tricks upon the mind. No Kor come to guide you to a dark dream. He took my hand, and we walked back to our home and sat together before the fire. What of the Zvolder and his deceitful web? Asked I. Indeed, there was one. I saw it as I passed, coming from town. I touched my torch to its web, and it burned just as I saw you flee into the house. Then it was something to fear? Fear is what you invited into your mind, when you let your imagination grow past what had been told. The old man who gave you a warning only told you of a curiosity. It was your own mind that made the fear grow. But I had no bravery. I ran in fear. You ran because you were brave. What hope would you, a little boy, have against the machinations of darker gods? But I have the experience and knowledge to light the web aflame without burning the post, the crossroads, the world. I've never liked Zvolders, Marn finished the tale, especially after that night. But, however much I still recoil, I do not flee at their sight. So that is one of my stories from inside of the Gloves of Eons, and it looks like we have a few more people here now. Hello, Tori. Hello, wife. Hello, Quinn. Well, Quinn was already here, but I'm saying hello again. Yeah, the book is out. That was just a story told inside of the book. I always try to have at least 2 tales told in each of my books, and because I love writing them, they're so much fun. Almost as fun as the epigraphs. No, they're more fun than writing the epigraphs that I write at the beginning. Thank you very much, Tori. Yeah, it's good. It's good to have finally gotten this book out. I wrote this book probably while I was in the middle. It was 2022. I was writing it as well as Fourscored, basically while I was publishing. So really, this is the first book that I've written since having been published. So it takes a lot of work. I know a lot of new authors don't realize how hard it is to write once you're published. I was very lucky to have already had 3 books written in the hopper that I could release over the course of a year. And then another one, Fourscored, I actually held off a year before releasing it. It was done a year prior, but I held on to it for a year. So it was basically I had 4 books in the hopper, and very glad that I did that. Would I've done it differently? No, probably not. But once you've published, you have that pressure of making sure you write a really good book for your follow-up, right? And so this is kind of my follow-up in a sense, because the rest of them we're already ready. Let's see. Questions. Hi, Jared. Bye, Jared. So how has my writing process changed since the start of the Kallattian series? I'm still up every morning from 5 a.m. on. And I've been doing that for 3 or 4 years now. There are times when I've fallen off the bandwagon, but I really buckled down on getting up at 5 a.m. when I wrote Thrice, which was in 2018, and I did it as I started it in NaNoWriMo. No, I planned for it in NaNoWriMo and really kind of worked on it over that winter. I had a successful NaNoWriMo of 30,000 words. It wasn't a whole story, but not last year, maybe the year before. I think this was the book that I did that with. Anyway, the way my process has changed, it hasn't changed so much as it shifts back and forth. Like, you know, I say I'm a planner, and Tori, you're a pantser, and I pants at times. Like right now, I've sort of been pantsing the end of this book, but I also pantsed the end of Bone Shroud when I first wrote it, and it stressed me out because the two books. So both of these books, which are now 300,000 words, were 175,000 word manuscript when I first wrote them and started pitching them out to publishers, and then split them up and got this to 150,000 words. So basically the 2/3 of the book of that first book, so it became this, and the last third of the book was expanded up into this. And they are better books for what they are now, because they're both 150, and the third one's 150 as well, and the fourth one's going to be 150 to 175 max. So the fact that I'm at the end of an arc and pantsing it does not surprise me, but I know what I'm doing better now about how to close up a bunch of loose ends. Not that I've ever finished a series, but I've finished arcs, and that's kind of the key is being able to finish an arc. So I mean, your process should change so that you're not stagnant, but it's also like, how do you make a shoe? You do it the same way. Your changes are just going to be how the shoe looks, or how do you beat a sword on an anvil. If you know how to do it, you're going to have very similar ways of doing your basics, and then you're going to change things up for like how you tie up things. Like I have a few loose ends that I'm not sure how they're going to end at the end of book 4, and I'm not so much worried about how they're going to end as I am wanting to make sure that they land in a way that leaves them open the way that I need them to be for book 5. So, which there will be a time gap between book 4 and 5. Yeah. I'm very, very glad about how well so far Book of Eons has been accepted among the few that have read it, including Quinn, who's here. Because I didn't know how I was going to land. I didn't know if I was pushing too far. I can't tell you, Tori, how it's going to end. It won't be a battlefield. There will be bigger battles in 5 through 8. There will be a giant denouement, absolutely. But I can't tell you more than that. But I can say that in books 5 through 8, escalation wise, the battles in 1 through 4 won't hold a candle to them, because it's gonna be big. world-changingly big. But I'm very excited to write 5 through 8. But I will need a break. I will need a breather. Tori said I need battle mode. Jinned. I gave him battle mode in the scene that I wrote last a couple days ago. So and it's not even as big as it could have been. I may even go back and rewrite that scene a little bit more. But I'm escalating things so big, I got to make sure nobody gets too completely overpowered, including Jinned. Anyway, and plus there's others who need to have time to shine. Yeah. T from Erudite just put up a video review today of Gloves of Eons, and he had a particular character that he really wanted to see more of, and I had to figure out how to deliver that for him, because it's going to make everybody else mad except him, and I'm okay with that. I can't give you battle mode Katiam because she's a lover, not a fighter, and she's not even a lover. Astrid, on the other hand, book 4, I also wrote a great battle for her. You're going to have, I'm expecting a lot of stand up and scream at the book moments in book 4. I think I haven't had a book that I've written so much that I have scenes when I read them, I laugh out loud because I can't believe that somebody said something to somebody else. So you have a lot to look forward to in book 4. There's a lot of not necessarily vindication, and not necessarily bad guys getting their comeuppance yet, but definitely moments that you're going to be very, very happy to read. Now, if you want battle, the big battle, I mean, juxtaposition is the fact that I'm going to have to write 5 through 8, which has a lot of big battle in it, and I'm going to be writing the Protectorate Wars, which is just about war, right? But even then, the wars won't really start until near the end of book 1, and then it starts ramping up. And I haven't even decided I have not officially decided if Protectorate Wars is a trilogy or not. There's a chance it becomes a 4-book series, because for some reason I like 4-book series. Actually, no, I know the reason. But it will also be, I also intend to write a ton of novellas to the Protectorate Wars. Like, that will be a huge feature to the Protectorate Wars, will be novellas that are outside of the body of the main plot of the series. But that's the animal I'm signing up for. So, but it will be, I'm yes, absolutely, Quinn. I've read it. I got to read it first, and Tori's book is really good. So save your pennies to buy it as a gift for everybody this Christmas, because you're going to love it. You're going to forget every other indie fantasy author ever after you read her book. Just saying, calling it now. Oh, you stop it. I don't need to stop it. I believe in it. And I know, and you know what? I know a good book when I see one, and it's a good book. I'm not just saying that. It's frustrating how clean your drafts are when you send them over and there's nothing to edit. Now, I also don't see typos as badly as other people. Not that I don't see typos. I mean, I can DNF a book if it's too poorly edited. But I don't. But yeah, you write a good book. So, does anybody have any other questions? We might end up pulling the plug on this in 6 minutes or so. Oh, good question. Okay, so if any of you are war gamers who are watching now or watching in the future, the Protectorate Wars, I intend to design, and I'm already working with a friend on uh, a war game for Protectoral Wars. It'll be a skirmish level. If you know your war games, it'll be a skirmish level, like 25 models to a side. And I intend there'll be some main factions with lots of different units for it, but I want to be able to do side faction units, like in terms of like Star Wars. If you had like Rogue Squadron on foot show up, and you're like, well, but they were at the Battle of Yavin. Why can't? And they were there to stop stormtroopers. Blah blah blah. What, a story of a unit, like a Dirty Dozen type story, but it isn't part of my main plot line. That's what I want to write novellas on. So then you can say, play a unit, and it has a novella of the mission you're going to be playing. That's why I'll have lots of novellas, because if I can have whole units that just get stories that are on the side because they had this one big event, Kavili Legionnaires that come and show up. Are they a main faction? Well, not for a while if they're a faction at all, but they do have a lot of action. So I want to write stories about the Kavili Legions that are only mentioned in passing in the main plot line. And so then, yeah, absolutely. Once novellas are written, there will be I can omnibus them. Just like I'm also writing Hrelgrin Templar stories. I need to write more of them. Once I have enough of them together to make what I'm calling a case book, I will omnibus them so you can buy them in print form, because they are written as short stories that are part of a group of cases, like watching a police procedural, because that's how I'm writing them as. They're a police procedural, and the feature to the police procedural is the main character of a police procedural are not the cops; it's the precinct itself. And so having lots of different points of view from the precinct of this story is being told by a detective, this story being told by a bounty hunter, this story is being told by a public defender, this story is being told by a beat cop. Then I can take all of those and the six stories that make up a case book is an arc. And I've broadly outlined about 4 arcs for the Templar stories, and they take place at the same time as the Kallattian Saga. And so the 4 of those will take place up to probably through book 6 of the Kallattian Saga. But they're completely on the side. Like they eventually take place adjacent to the main plot line, but they're not main characters in the plot line. So I have one story I need to publish, and I need to write a second one like pronto, because the third story in the Templar files is my story that's going to be in the omnibus, with the winter omnibus that Dominish is publishing. So yeah. And yes, Quinn, Hrelgrins cannot even ask questions. So fun feature of the Hrelgrin culture is that they don't ask questions. Obviously little kids ask questions because they're learning how to parse their thoughts, but culturally, to ask a question is to show that you're stupid, is what they believe. And so they do everything they can to ask around a question by making blunt statements of tell me your phone number, as opposed to asking for a phone number. You make a demand, which makes them a very terse people, but they cut to the heart of things. Or do they? Right? Because you can also dance around not asking a question and go really far without ever saying anything. So it just requires that Hrelgrins have to think through how they're going to ask something, because they can't ask a question. So that's always really fun. I actually have to, at the end of each story I write with them, I do a search for a question mark and make sure if there are any questions asked, they're done in under duress or in the box when they're interrogating somebody. So it's very fun. I do really need to carve out some time to at least write one more story so I can get book 1 and 2 out. I need to get some props to take a photo for my cover for each of the cases, so I can do like a still life story. But so I have some kind of cover image. I probably will not read that as an audiobook until I compile it into an anthology, into a case book, because it's a lot of work to try to put out an audiobook for for each short story until I figure out how best to do that. But those will be available soon, I hope. It could be we see the first Templar story in November, so I can get that one out at least before the winter anthology. I'd like to get that out, and then I'll release the other 4 stories over the course of next year. So there's a lot coming to Kallattai, as well as finishing up Kallattian Saga. And I'm, and crazy me, I'm also outlining another story, another book series that will be a 4-book series. But that one I can't write one at a time. I actually will need to very, very, very heavily outline all 4 books before I even write the first one, because it's timey-wimey, and I need to make sure that that it's coherent. Well, are there any other questions or requests? I don't have my guitar here, so I can't sing a song for you. But yeah, if you have any questions, I'll give you a couple minutes to ask. And Tori wants to do a writing party for her new book idea that she had today that she hasn't told me about yet. So I guess we'll have to do that for our new series. I would absolutely love to write a cozy story about the wandering Gigantes. That's a great idea. I got to think about that. Maybe a Gigantes. I have a Call of the Wild White Fang story I want to write. And maybe the main character of that will need to find the Gigantes. That's a good thought. I don't think so. I don't think I'd write a prequel to Jinn's origin story, because there's not a lot that would happen, except him being a young jerk. But I will be writing a jerk when I write the Protectorate Wars, because it will feature Dorian Muir as a young man, and he is not the old man that we know now. So you'll get a bit of that, but if you really want a younger Jinn, just read Joven in Thrice. No, they're 2 different characters when they're younger. I don't know. I have other stories I want to tell, and his story is being told. I might. It's gonna take a while before I'm ready for it. I might write an early, before Kallattian Saga story of Hanan and Ralia, but their life kind of starts when the Kallattian Saga begins. So it's like, how do you do it without further de-escalating where they're already at, right? Or showing that they were super powerful beforehand. And it's always an issue with prequels. If you don't have somewhere to, if you start at 0, how do you go below 0 in case of like power or whatever? And I think a prequel story of Jinn's story would be a huge frustration to a lot of people reading it, because he was a young princeling philanderer who murdered a guy, and so he became a paladin, and so that would just be one big frustrating story. Because I'll have to think about that. Good question. Well, I think. Oh, random question. Here we go. Random question. Will the Dry Walker feature prominently at all in the Protectorate Wars? Raffo. No, I'm joking. Not Raffo. Yes, he will, because he was he was probably the one big champion. I might figure out how to put a second one in at the Protectorate Wars. And if you have, and I know you have, Quinn, but in this there is reference to the Dry Walker, who's one of Khosran's champions, that he had a place he had completely desertified in Bortali, and then he left to go to the Protectorate Wars and fight for his god there, and was an absolute menace. So yes, he will be a big character in that, as well as some other small references I make in Bone Shroud to other people who will show up on the side you wouldn't expect them to be on, since they're featured in Legends, also told in Bone Shroud. And I'm slowly kind of unfolding who I think is going to actually show up in that too, especially while I'm right now writing book 4 and I'm discovering more about the Veld, the Dreamscape, and the mage / somnomancers that rule there. What I'm uncovering in, it kind of rolls into what Tori was asking. I was like, would you write a prequel to Jinin? You have to figure out where is he at now, where would he have been before that. I have to do a lot of that even in the series that I'm doing, because it's like, if there was this great war, how great were the nations then that they could all commit to the war? And nothing seems like it's all that fallen apart, even though it is currently, because it's been 60 years. And so a lot of what's falling apart in the society during the Kallattian Saga is due to the Protectorate Wars effectively pulling the rug out from under everybody, and so the recovery was kind of a quiet recovery, to the point that everything's kind of threadbare and nobody really realizes that. So I have to do a lot of not redesigning, but like figuring out, okay, well, if now in book 4 the Somnomancers and Mages can do this, what could they do then? Or is there so much that was just recently discovered? So there's a lot of interplay with that. Same thing you'll see with the tools made of Skyfall metal. How new are they? Were they just discovered, as the scholars of the Modians seem to think? Or are there even older tools that exist, which we know at least one of them? And so it's kind of fun to figure out those things. Like, as you know, I said very early on years ago that I didn't feel that Kallattai had a very strong magic system because it didn't have magic. And then I discovered that it did. And every time I uncover another layer, I realized that the building blocks were already there. So while I didn't have a formal, here's how magic works, I've discovered how it works along with the characters in the books. I'm very intentional and careful about how I want those to work, because I grew up reading comics of which make no sense when you pile on all of these. I've read lots of books on the science of X-Men, the science of superheroes. How does it work? And how do you marry the fact that there's magic and psionics and this? And it's just because in superhero land, they just slap a new X-Men in with a new superpower. Isn't that cool? And someone else will figure out how it works with the rest of the X-Men later on. I can't stand that. I want to make sure that there's a coherency in the rules of magic. Doesn't have to, for me, I don't need to be as stringent as Sanderson is, but I do want there to be rules that are being followed, and there are rules that are being followed in Kallattai, and it even just comes down to like one guiding principle that I use inside the way that magic works, because it's not spells per se, but it is. And that's all I can say without saying Raffo. But consistency is important, because I also will see other stories that have such a, like Lord of the Rings as an example. What are the rules? We don't know anything. We know that we know that Gandalf can make light, and we know that his staff is important. That's kind of all we know, and there's that, and that mystery is there, and that's fine because it's legendary, right? But it's never inconsistent, and so I always try to keep a really strong internal consistency in my works. So yeah. All right. I think that is the extent of our questions. You all have my if you ever want to message me, you can. You know, I'm on all the socials, including Blue Sky, under Andrew D MTH. Helps you remember it. It's Andrew D to the nth power. And you can find me everywhere. You can ask me questions there. I'm always happy to chat. If you don't know me, and thank you very much, Tori. If you don't know me personally and you want to message me, just don't write your message like you're a bot, and I won't ignore you. If you write a random message that says something like, "Hello, I am also an author. Would you like to talk about writing?" I don't respond to those, and I delete them, because if you really aren't a bot, you really sound like a bot. You should fix that. So sorry. But yeah, chat with me. Always happy to chat and answer questions about what I'm writing, what you're writing, how to write, what to write, when to write. And yeah, until the next book I write comes out, who knows? Maybe I have a secret one up my sleeve. I don't know if I do. Maybe I do. And I release a book in a month. Who can know? Until next time, have a great day. And may the road go ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Bye.